Hi, I'm Lark. My parents called me useless and told me to never come back. This was after I paid off their $300,000 debt. After I skipped vacations, lived off noodles, and gave up my chance at owning a home, just so they could keep theirs. At the family celebration, they gave my sister the credit. At dinner, they gave me silence. And when I finally asked for acknowledgement, they erased me from the family photo wall. Now they pretend I never existed. But what happens when the one you erase decides to leave a paper trail? It was just supposed to be dinner, the kind where you sit down out of obligation, not appetite, where you pass plates and pretend things aren't cracked beneath the surface. I hadn't been home in a few months, not since the final payment cleared on the second mortgage, not since I'd decided to stop explaining myself. The house smelled like warm rolls and canned gravy. Cliff was already at the head of the table, eyes glued to his phone. Vera fussed with the centerpiece as if that plastic foliage could distract from everything we hadn't said. And Brannon? He sprawled in the chair next to mine, earbuds dangling, one sock half off. Glad you made it, Vera said without looking at me. I sat down slowly. No hug, no thanks. No mention of the $300,000 I'd paid over the last 2 years to keep this house from foreclosure. Not that I needed a medal, but acknowledgement? A nod? Something? Dinner started like most others I remembered. Brannon talking about some business idea that sounded suspiciously like a pyramid scheme. Vera bragging about Callista's new curriculum project, as if she hadn't always been the golden one. I kept quiet, buttering my roll, counting each chew to stay present. Then Brannon turned to me. "You still doing that finance thing?" he asked, half a smirk playing at his lips. I nodded. "Still leading risk assessment for Trioak." He gave a fake impressed whistle. "Wow! Maybe you can spot the risk in my next venture." Vera laughed softly. Cliff didn't look up. "Actually," Brannon continued, "I was gonna ask. You think you could float me a few grand to kickstart this, just until it gets off the ground?" I blinked. "Brannon, I just finished paying the mortgage. I can't—" Vera cut in, spoon hitting her plate a little too loud. "You always do this, always throw money back in people's faces. Just because you helped doesn't mean you get to control everyone." "I'm not trying to control anyone," I said quietly, "but I'm not a bank either." Vera's voice rose. "You just want to play savior. You act like you're better than this family because you make more money." "Well, guess what, Lark? You're not doing anything special." Brannon chuckled. "All she ever does is hold money over people's heads." I turned to Cliff. "Are you going to say anything?" He stared at the mashed potatoes like they might rescue him. And then Vera said it. "Honestly, you're useless if all you're going to do is throw it in our face." Everything stopped. The sound of the fork slipping from my fingers. The way the air got thick, like molasses in my lungs. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The word rang through my head like a siren. Useless. After everything. I thought about all those nights working 2 jobs, eating granola bars at my desk so I could send money home, missing out on vacations, skipping dental visits, saying no to life so they could keep theirs intact. And now? Useless. I wasn't sure how long I sat there, frozen. Time folded in on itself. My chest burned. But my voice stayed calm when I finally spoke. "I've paid the entire $300,000, I said, looking at no one and everyone. "Every dime. I have nothing left to give." Vera didn't blink. "If you feel that way, then you don't belong here anymore." She stabbed her green beans like she was talking about a grocery list, not her daughter. "And don't come back." Cliff stayed silent. Brannon shrugged, as if I'd overreacted for breathing. I rose slowly, wiping my hands on my napkin. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just looked around the table one last time. My chair pushed back, my plate half full. They weren't going to stop me. Not this time. No one followed as I walked to the door. I picked up my bag from the hook where I'd left it, slipped my coat on. I paused, one hand on the knob, and let the weight of the last 10 years press into my spine, then drop. As I stepped into the evening air, I felt the chill wrap around me like clarity. My heart beat steadily, not with fear, but with something I hadn't felt in a long time: certainty. They told me not to come back. And I think, maybe I finally agree. 3 weeks before that dinner, before I was told I didn't belong, I stood outside the banquet hall, staring at the golden letters stenciled across the glass doors. Family Resilience Celebration. That's what they were calling it. A night to honor our survival, the triumph over financial ruin. I had survived all right. Quietly. At my desk. Through wire transfers and silent sacrifices. I showed up because I was invited. Not because I expected thanks. But part of me still hoped they'd remember. Inside, the room buzzed with the warmth of laughter and sparkling cider. Table linens in dark green and ivory. Framed photos of the house on display near the podium, like it had endured something on its own. Vera floated from table to table like she'd orchestrated a gala, cheeks kissed, arms clasped. Cliff stood near the front, drink in hand, nodding to every compliment like it belonged to him. My name wasn't on any of the signs. I found my seat near the back, past the cousins, behind the church friends. The card read, "Guest of Dorn Family." I stared at it, then flipped it over. Blank on the back. Callista took the stage first. Her voice carried effortlessly, polished and soft, practiced like every one of her leadership luncheon speeches from school. "This home has been the beating heart of our family," she said. "But it was our unity, our shared faith, that truly kept it standing." She spoke of her role in coordinating calls with the bank, of keeping our parents calm through every twist, and how she and Brannon brainstormed creative ways to restructure the household budget, none of which ever happened. Then came the phrase, "If I hadn't co-signed that initial refinance," she paused for effect, "none of this would have been possible." I blinked. My breath caught in the back of my throat. She hadn't co-signed anything. I had. I remembered the bank manager's office, the way the pen felt in my hand as I signed the paperwork no one else was willing to touch. Because I had the credit, because I had the income, because I didn't say no. Vera took the mic next. "Without Callista's backbone, none of this would have been possible," she said. "She carried us." There was applause. People clapped. Some even stood. I sat, still. A woman I vaguely remembered from church leaned toward me and whispered, "You must be so proud of your sister." I managed a nod, but something behind my ribs fractured. My mind drifted. Back to the nights I'd stayed late at the office, eating pretzels from the vending machine just to save enough for the next mortgage payment. The day I canceled my vacation because the roof needed patching. The moment I told my manager I couldn't accept a relocation offer because I was still tethered to a house I didn't live in. And here I was, watching a slideshow flash across a rented projector. Brannon grinning in the living room. Callista trimming a Christmas tree. Vera painting the porch. I wasn't in a single frame. When I opened the printed program, I searched for my name. Nothing. Callista, Coordinator of Family Support. Brannon, Emotional Encourager. Even Cliff had Moral Steward written under his name. There was no lark, no mention of the money, no line at the bottom thanking all contributors. Brannon wandered over with a half-filled glass and a crooked smile. "Loosen up," he said. "You didn't do it for the credit, right?" He didn't wait for an answer. He never needed one. I stared down at my speech draft, tucked neatly in the side of my purse. I had written it 3 days ago, in case someone handed me the mic. A few words about perseverance, about second chances. It didn't matter now. I slipped it out, tore it in half. Dessert hadn't even been served yet. But I stood, smoothed my skirt, and pushed in my chair. Nobody noticed. As I passed the front table, I caught Vera's eye. She was laughing at something Brannon said. I don't even think she saw me walk by. Outside, I waited for the valet. The night air stung a little, not from the cold, but from the stillness. I unlocked my phone, opened the draft folder, and deleted the only speech I'd ever written for myself. This wasn't my celebration. It never had been. I just paid the invoice. 2 weeks had passed since the banquet. 2 weeks since I watched them rewrite the story I had paid for. I told myself I wouldn't look back, wouldn't dig, but the silence that followed only made the questions louder. Late one Thursday evening, I sat cross-legged on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by unopened folders, worn bank statements, and years of quiet obedience. I'd already brewed a second cup of tea I wouldn't finish. My phone rested on the table, screen dark, notifications muted. I wasn't avoiding anyone. No one was reaching out. I started flipping through my payment history, not for proof, just to remind myself that I hadn't imagined it, that I had, in fact, paid every installment on time. One entry from 18 months ago made me pause. A wire labeled Final Mortgage Clearance that I didn't remember marking as final. The amount, $14,800, was higher than usual, and the destination account didn't match the regular routing number I had saved. My chest tightened. I logged into my bank's online portal, pulled up the full transfer record, and saw that it had been rerouted to a joint account under two names, Marcus Morrow and Callista Dorn. Not mine. Not even partially. I stared at the screen long enough for it to dim, then went cold again. The next morning, I called the mortgage lender. I told them I was reviewing past contributions and asked if I could confirm my involvement on the loan. After a few minutes of hold music and polite small talk, the rep returned. "Ma'am, the only borrowers listed on this property are Mr. Morrow and Ms. Dorn," she said. I cleared my throat. "But I've been sending payments from my account for over 2 years." "Yes, we see the payments," she replied. "But since your name isn't on the original or amended documents, those are classified as voluntary third-party contributions. No legal obligation, no equity." I thanked her and hung up before my voice cracked. Voluntary? Third party. I felt like I'd just stepped into a courtroom without realizing I was on trial. I emailed the county records office and requested a full title history. It arrived in my inbox the next morning. I opened the PDF and scrolled. There it was. My name. On the original refinance document, signed in person 3 years ago at the credit union branch on Reading Road. I remembered the cold pen. The sting of knowing my credit score had become more useful than my presence. Then, 10 pages later, an amendment. Filed 11 months later. My name was removed. No notice, no email, no discussion. The same month, I had wired the $14,800. My stomach flipped, but not with shock, with recognition. I knew this pattern now. I had seen it in every dinner, every photo crop, every speech I wasn't part of. They hadn't just taken from me. They had erased me. The worst part? I let them. I printed the documents, highlighted the dates, circled the signatures. I laid them across my coffee table like puzzle pieces I finally had permission to solve. I went into my email archive, searched for every transfer confirmation, every message from Vera or Cliff asking me to help out just a little more. I screenshotted texts, matched them to bank dates, created folders, labeled everything. Then I opened a spreadsheet. The first row, date. Second, amount. Third, purpose. Fourth, promised repayment, YN. I stared at the blank document. At the top of the sheet, I typed the file name, Family Reconciliation Ledger. I sat back in my chair and looked out the window. The streetlights had just flickered on. Below, someone walked a golden retriever. Inside, my heater kicked on with a low hum. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought I'd stay quiet. But I had receipts, and I was done pretending not to see. The last time I drove to my parents' house, I brought more than my usual silence. This time, I brought paper. They'd invited me to dinner for Cliff's birthday. A peace offering, they called it. Vera said it would be good to be a family again. I knew better. They wanted control back. But I agreed. Not because I was interested in playing nice. I came to deliver something they didn't expect. The truth, in writing. It was a Thursday evening when I pulled into the driveway. The porch light was already on. The yard looked the same, too much mulch, solar lights blinking out of sync. I parked behind Brannon's car, shut off the engine, and took a deep breath. Inside, the house was loud with laughter. Callista's voice rang from the kitchen. Vera hovered over something on the stove. Cliff sat in the recliner, eyes glazed at the TV. No one looked up when I walked in. "Hey there," Vera said over her shoulder. "Glad you could make it. Just in time for roast." The table was set for 5. Plates, utensils, folded napkins, perfectly spaced. But there was no seat for me, no name card, no plate. Just an extra stool pushed into the corner, next to the pantry. "You can grab that stool if you want," Vera said. "We didn't know if you were actually coming." I carried the printed refinancing documents in a large manila envelope. Instead of responding, I pulled the stool over and quietly set the envelope beside my glass of water. Nobody asked what it was. Dinner began with Cliff mumbling a prayer and Brannon making a joke about being the favorite child. Vera served, Callista passed plates. I watched them move like clockwork, this well-oiled family machine that ran without me. Or so they thought. Halfway through the meal, while they were praising Callista's upcoming conference in Denver, I picked up the envelope and slid it across the table, stopping it right in front of Vera's plate. She paused mid-bite, glanced at it, then looked at me. "What's this?" "The refinance agreement," I said. "The one I signed. And the amendment that removed me, without notice." Brannon let out a half laugh. "Still obsessed with receipts, huh?" Callista shifted in her seat, took a sip of water. Cliff tried weakly. "Let's not turn this into something ugly." "No," I said, cutting him off. "I'm not here for a fight, but I'm also not here to pretend anymore. I'm not asking for recognition. I'm saying this stops here. If this keeps going, if my name keeps getting erased from things I built, I won't stay quiet." Vera picked up the envelope, opened it slowly. She didn't skim. She read every line. Her face didn't flinch. She folded it again, set it down neatly beside her knife. "You've been digging," she said finally. "Careful, Lark. Bitterness will eat you alive." I leaned in, keeping my voice level. Bitterness is what happens when someone rewrites history while you're still alive to remember the truth. Brannon raised his glass, all amusement. "Here's to old wounds no one cares about." The room went still. I looked at each of them. Vera, composed but calculating. Cliff, always small when it mattered. Callista, eyes down. And Brannon, proud of his cruelty. I stood. "Thank you for the invitation," I said, "and for confirming everything I needed to know." Vera blinked. "Lark, this," I said, gathering my purse, "was the last warning." And then I walked out. No yelling, no crying, no dramatic door slam, just footsteps on a floor that never really welcomed me back. It started with a ping. I was making tea in the kitchen, not thinking about them. At least, not out loud. My phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from my crypto wallet. 2-factor authentication had been reset. I hadn't touched it in weeks. I checked the login history, IP address from Loveland. My stomach tightened. There was only one person who still had access to my old email account. Vera. I'd never changed the recovery settings after setting it up with her years ago. It had felt harmless then, just a way to keep her informed. She'd said, "Family doesn't hide money from each other." Now it felt like a trap I had walked into with both eyes open. By mid-morning, I was deep into every account tied to my name. Investment apps, shared phone plans, old PayPal logins. I started locking things down, changing passwords, revoking permissions. My screen lit up with forgotten relics of generosity. A shared Hulu account, a joint car insurance policy. Then I reached the DMV site. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just making sure no one else had gotten creative. But when I searched the title for my old SUV, the one I had left behind when I moved to Chicago, my name didn't show up. The car had been transferred, sold last month. I called the used car lot listed in the title transfer. A man answered, cheerful, casual. I gave the VIN number. "Oh yeah," he said. "That was sold by a guy named Brannon Kells. Said it was his sister's car, but she gave it to him a while back. Title was clean." My throat felt dry. Did he have proof of ownership? He had all the paperwork, the man replied. Had the bill of sale and the title signed off. Nothing weird flagged our system. I hung up without another word. I sat down on the floor. Not the couch, not the bed. Just the cold hardwood, where no comfort could soften what was happening. They had taken my name off a house. Now they'd taken my car. And just to make sure they didn't miss anything, they went for my bank accounts too. There wasn't going to be a third round. I opened my laptop, clicked to my Zoom account, and set up a group call. I gave it a title, Clarification. They joined one by one. Vera's face appeared first, blurry and too close to the camera. Cliff next, seated behind her, eyes already tired. Callista wore a light cardigan and kept glancing off screen. Brannon was the last, chewing gum, smirking. I didn't wait for them to ask why we were meeting. You went into my investment accounts, I began, voice steady. You used an email I trusted you with. You sold my vehicle, without consent. And for 2 years, I've watched you cash in on my effort, while pretending I never existed. Silence. I continued. So here's how this goes from now on. If any of you contact me for anything other than a legal matter or a formal apology, I will block you permanently. Not just phone and email. I will have every connection scrubbed. Brannon leaned back. Someone's feeling dramatic. Vera's expression tightened. You think you're above us now? That because you moved away and got your fancy job, you get to talk to us like we're criminals? No, I said. I don't think I'm above anything. I think I'm done being beneath it. Callista looked up for the first time. Her lips parted like she might say something, but then she didn't. Cliff just stared into the void, the way he always did when decisions got hard. I ended the call. Then I got to work. I reported the vehicle title misuse to the DMV, logged the crypto breach, archived every transfer I had ever sent. I closed the joint phone plan, revoked all shared logins. I changed the email recovery options Vera had once insisted on helping me set. As I typed, I could feel something new building inside me. Not rage, not grief. A border. A final, clear border. That night, as I sat by the window, watching the train lights flicker through the city haze, my phone buzzed again. A message from Callista. Subject line, "You're going too far." I didn't open it, not yet. But I smiled. Because for the first time in a very long time, I was the one drawing the line. 1 year ago, I posted a message on Facebook. It wasn't elaborate, just a paragraph or two, thanking the people who'd helped hold the pieces together while I covered the mortgage, paid off the debts, skipped holidays, missed promotions. I didn't name names, just a quiet reflection on perseverance, a soft acknowledgement of sacrifice. Mine. I wasn't looking for applause. So when it popped up in my memories, a week after the call with Callista, I almost ignored it. Until I saw the notification. Vera Langford has shared a memory. My heart stopped before my thumb could. She had reposted my exact words, but replaced every first-person phrase with Callista's name. Where I had written, "Holding the line while everything cracked beneath us," she wrote, "Callista held the line." Where I had written, "Some things are worth standing for, even when no one sees it," she changed it to, "She stood for all of us." The caption, "So proud of our strong daughter." I didn't comment, didn't message her, I didn't need to. I just screenshotted it, saved it to a new folder titled Rewrites. Then I closed the app. 2 days later, I stood inside the fellowship hall of the local church, plastic cup of fruit punch in hand, surrounded by smiling faces and casseroles in foil pans. It was a community appreciation dinner for families that had endured, as the program called it. Vera had submitted our name weeks earlier, apparently. I'd emailed a short video clip to the church's admin assistant, something modest. A 2-minute thank you to the community for their prayers, a nod to resilience, a tribute to Grandma's faith. I knew the tone to strike, warm but real. When the presentation began, I watched as Brannon's name flashed on the screen under creative spirit of the family. A slide of him finger painting at age 6. Callista followed. Heart of the home. A montage of her teaching, gardening, standing in front of the porch I'd helped refinance. My video? Never shown. I waded through the rest of the tribute reel, arms crossed, face still. Afterward, someone leaned over to Vera and whispered something. She glanced back at me, smiled, and said, "We had limited time, maybe next year." That smile was surgical. I left before dessert, again. At home, I uploaded my full video to my personal page and wrote, "Since mine didn't make it to the big screen, real voices don't always fit the narrative." It started with a few likes. Then the comments rolled in. "Brannon, ever reliable. Way to make everything about you again." I didn't wait this time. I replied, right there, public and plain. "No, I'm finally making it about me, period." He didn't respond. The next morning, I forwarded the original email chain, submission timestamp, video link, confirmation of receipt, to the church office. I didn't accuse, just asked if they'd received everything. 3 hours later, I got a response from Pastor Reeves himself. "I apologize, Lark. Your message was received. We'll follow up with the committee directly." That night, Vera called 3 times. I didn't pick up. A day later, my Facebook inbox chimed. A message from Callista. "You're starting to embarrass us. What exactly do you want?" I stared at the screen. What did I want? To be heard? To be thanked? To be allowed to take up space in a story I bled for? No. I wanted to make sure that the next time they erased me, they'd think twice. And this time, I wasn't using my inside voice. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and addressed in Callista's handwriting. It had weight, like it carried more than just paper. When I opened it, I found an invitation, floral border, gold embossing, inviting me to a remembrance tea for Grandma Miriam. I almost threw it away. But I didn't. Not because I wanted to see them. I didn't. But because Grandma deserved better. Because she had written me something once that I hadn't shared yet, and I knew it was time. The tea was set for a Sunday afternoon at Vera and Cliff's house. I arrived early on purpose, hoping to avoid the crowd, to sit with the memory of the only person who never asked me to be more than I already was. The door was unlocked. No one greeted me when I stepped inside. Light piano music played low from a speaker in the corner, and the dining room table was covered with scones, fruit, and polished teacups. I turned toward the hallway leading to the living room, and froze. A collage stretched across the wall, spanning decades. Black and white wedding portraits, Polaroids from Easter Sundays, vacation snapshots, framed prints from Brannon's art shows and Callista's school awards. Not one picture had me in it. Not a school photo, not a birthday, not even the one from the porch steps where I knew I had stood with them, because I remembered the shoes I'd worn. Vera appeared beside me, holding a tray of napkins. "We just used the clearest ones," she said, like she'd rehearsed it. I looked at her, but didn't respond. There was nothing to say. I turned toward the kitchen and walked away. Guests trickled in over the next hour. Neighbors, church friends, a few extended family members I hadn't seen since Grandma's funeral. The chairs in the sunroom filled quickly, and soon Callista stood by the fireplace with a stack of note cards in hand. She smiled softly. "Thank you all for coming. Grandma Miriam meant so much to us." Heads nodded. A few murmurs of agreement. "She used to tell me," Callista continued, "that I was the one with the heart to carry us all, that I was the glue." Something inside me curled, tight, familiar. I reached into my coat pocket and closed my fingers around the letter. Grandma's real words, inked in her small, deliberate script, folded once, still intact. I waited until Callista finished. Then I stood. "She never said that," I said quietly. Eyes turned. Chairs shifted. Callista blinked. "Excuse me?" "She didn't say that," I repeated. "She wrote to me, in her handwriting. I brought the letter." A bead of silence fell like a curtain. Brandon coughed. "Not the time, Lark." I ignored him, reached into my coat, pulled the envelope free, walked to the remembrance table, and placed it on the lace runner beside Grandma's framed photo. "I was the one she trusted," I said. "I was the one she wrote to. While you all were busy with awards and spotlights, I was the one answering her calls at 2 a.m., and I kept quiet. Until now." Callista's face was still. Too still. Vera stood slowly. "This isn't the place." "No," I said, "but neither is that wall." I turned and nodded toward the collage. "She was the only one who saw me. And even now, even in her absence, you've found a way to make her voice serve your story." Gasps. A few people looked away. One woman, a friend of Grandma's from Bible study, reached for the letter, then gently pressed her hand to the envelope like it mattered. I walked toward the front door without another word. Before stepping outside, I turned back one last time. "You can keep the wall," I said. "I'll keep the truth." That evening, as the sky dimmed over the city and I returned to the quiet of my apartment, my phone lit up. A message from Vera. "You humiliated your sister. This won't be forgotten." I stared at it for a long time before replying. It wasn't meant to be. I didn't call ahead. There was no point. They'd made it clear I wasn't welcome, and I'd stopped pretending I needed permission to pick up what was mine. It was early. Too early for Vera to be dressed, which is exactly why I timed it that way. I pulled into the driveway and noticed the garage door already open. A stack of boxes sat by the wall, neatly taped, each one labeled in Vera's handwriting. Old books, winter coats, misc, lark. On top of the tallest box was a single sheet of paper, folded in half. "Kayla, don't come back unannounced again. It's unsettling, unsettling, not inappropriate, not hurtful, just inconvenient." I didn't react, just tucked the note into my purse and got to work. Inside the top box, under a pile of sweaters I hadn't seen since 2019, was an envelope, unmarked. Inside, my original bank documents, mortgage records, receipts of every transfer I'd made, property appraisals, even the notarized copy of the first agreement, the one with my name on it. Everything intact, everything they'd pretended didn't exist. I sat down on the edge of the box and took out my phone. One by one, I photographed each page, the timestamps, the signatures. When I was done, I zipped the envelope into a fireproof case and placed it into my trunk, right next to the boxes. Then I drove to the edge of town, parked outside a coffee shop with free Wi-Fi, and emailed my lawyer. Subject: Notice of Intent, Equity Dispute. I attached the scanned documents, summarized the timeline, and ended the message the way I'd been rehearsing for days. This is not vengeance. This is correction. By the time I got back to Chicago, I had a reply from the firm. They'd draft the formal notice and send the letter certified by week's end. I approved it within the hour. It felt clean. Not satisfying, not triumphant, but clean. 2 mornings later, Vera texted, "If money is all you want, you've proven everything we feared." I didn't bother replying. I opened Instagram, took a picture of the note she left on the box, the one that said, "Don't come back unannounced again," and posted it to a private group I ran for financial professionals. The caption: "Sometimes the door shuts itself. All you have to do is walk away." There were no comments, just a string of quiet likes, and that was enough. I spent the rest of that day organizing a drawer of old receipts, unplugging from the noise. I deleted their contact info from my phone, not out of anger, out of necessity. Late that night, just before bed, my phone buzzed once. Unknown number. No message. But I knew the silence. It was Callista. A month had passed since the letter was mailed. The silence that followed was louder than any outburst I could have expected. No reply from Vera. No voicemail from Cliff. Just one text from Callista that read, "Noted." I wasn't disappointed. I wasn't even surprised. Some people don't respond because they're guilty. Others don't respond because they still think they're right. Either way, I had peace. That morning, a small package arrived at my apartment in Chicago. No return address, but the cursive on the label was unmistakable. Elsie Monroe, Grandma Miriam's oldest friend from church. I hadn't seen her since the memorial tea. Inside was a wooden box, hand-sanded, corners smooth, sealed with a clasp I recognized from Grandma's bedroom drawers. I undid the latch slowly. Resting on top of a folded silk cloth was a note written in a careful, slanted hand. Lark, you were never invisible to me. You carried us more than anyone will ever say out loud. When it felt like the roof might fall, you held the beams. You have always been the one who stayed steady, even when everyone else walked crooked. Love, Grandma. I read it twice, then once more. I folded it back with trembling hands and placed it on the kitchen table. There was nothing dramatic about that moment, just a deep, steady warmth, a fullness in my chest, the kind that doesn't beg to be noticed. It just exists. Quiet, steady, true. By the end of that week, word spread that Vera and Cliff had quietly stepped down from the church committee. Some called it voluntary. Others whispered it wasn't. I didn't care either way. Brandon posted on Facebook about being stabbed in the back by greed. I scrolled past. 1 like, 2 comments. One from someone who simply replied, "People remember." Callista didn't respond to the equity claim. Her name was on the house deed. So was Cliff's, not mine. But that didn't stop the letter from being valid. It didn't demand a fight, just acknowledgement. I never expected it from her, and she gave me exactly that. Nothing. In the space left behind, I started something new. I built a quiet little blog. Nothing flashy. Just a space for women, especially daughters, who had found themselves paying everyone else's bills and losing their own names in the process. I called it The Ledger. I shared my story anonymously, downplaying the drama, focusing on the details, receipts, documentation, boundaries. Within weeks, messages poured in. My brother took the family business while I covered my dad's chemo. My mom told me I was selfish when I asked for rent after 10 years. I thought I was the only one. We weren't. That space gave me something I hadn't realized I was missing, a version of myself that wasn't reduced to silence or sacrifice, a version that helped but didn't disappear. I didn't win. There was no parade, but I stopped fighting the battle that had never truly been mine. I stopped walking into rooms expecting to be acknowledged by people who never saw me to begin with. One evening, walking home from the grocery store, I passed a house on Elmwood Avenue, beige siding, blue shutters. It looked so much like the home I grew up in that I paused. I waited for the ache, the longing, the tug of nostalgia. It never came. I stared a moment longer, then kept walking. I didn't need their forgiveness. I didn't need a redo. I just needed space. Enough quiet to finally hear my own thoughts, not filtered through guilt or debt or someone else's idea of family. And I finally had it. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Being the quiet one doesn't mean you owe the world your silence. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. I spent years holding a family together that was more than willing to let me carry the weight, then punish me for it. Healing didn't come from confrontation. It came from choosing myself, finally, after being everyone's second choice. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been the one who gave everything and got erased? What would you do differently if you could go back? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story hit home, or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't land with you, I'd still love to hear your thoughts. Let's talk. And if this story moved you even a little, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's more coming, and you won't want to miss what's next.